Welcome to iPen Podcast, Interviews and Conversations. Here we bring entrepreneurs and their business to their audience and communities as well as ours. We welcome and connect with them to share who they are and what they do. Authors, entrepreneurs, we extend the invitation to promote your business here on our podcast and in iPen Magazine. Your article, your story, your promotions, how you can connect with others, a new audience, a quarterly magazine presented online for all to view and subscribe to. For articles, ads, and subscriptions, please contact ipendesigns@gmail.com. For your viewing, you can see past articles, past interviews on www.NanetteMBuchanan.com. Welcome to the show. Good evening, good evening, good evening. I'm Nanette Buchanan, and this is iPen Visions Podcast, Interviews and Conversations. And I want to welcome you. It's June, people. It's June. It's beginning to be those months that I love, the summer. I could take more heat than I could take cold. So I appreciate the summer months with the sunshine and being able to go on vacations and trips. And I would assume that the teachers are glad to be away from all of the hustle and bustle and everything of the students. Everybody gets a little in the summer. So we're beginning our summer with someone that would make you go, because, well, let's wait a minute. Let's just wait a minute. Let me bring my partner in crime up first. Let me introduce you to Felice Reeves. Those of you that know her and love her like I do, welcome, Felice. Good evening. How are you?
Hey, what did you do? You're like, okay, I love it.
Just that. It's just the idea, I think, of the change of the seasons. When the seasons get ready to change, you get ready to go in the winter, you go, oh, okay, I got to brace. I don't know.
Right. Yes.
And then when the spring comes, you're like, oh, it's going to be so pretty. But in the summer, for some reason, and you notice I skipped fall because I don't even know, fall and winter always, they're right there together. But the summer kind of, and I guess the guest that we have on tonight, that ignited me, because I said to myself, wow, it's the beginning of summer and we're having this type of guests. This type of guests come on, because I always enjoyed the summer breezes, the summer calm, the summer, this, that, and the other. And our guests, for the audience, of course, they don't know who our guest is, other than those that have seen the flyer. But the thing about it is, we're talking about tonight's guest being Mar-El, and he's a jazz artist. And I wasn't a big jazz fan. I went to Arts High in Newark, New Jersey, and took up music. So I know the instruments and the music and everything else. But my husband is an avid jazz. He loves jazz. Oh my gosh. And it's
hello, and
summer. It's summer. So how great is it that our intelligent minds got together and found a jazz artist?
Very good.
But the other part of it is, he writes. Not just music, but he also writes poetry, or a form of poetry, a form of expression that says, hey, you need to be jazzy with it. You need to be smooth. You need to have a little bit of, what did he say?
Well, you know what? It seems that you're intrigued, but
listen, I'm intrigued simply because words and music just do me in anyway. So I'm intrigued anyway. But I mean, what intrigued me more about this guest was that he seems to want to say, and I'll say it this way because I'll let him explain it, but he seems to want to say he knows what women want to hear.
Oh, Oh, okay. Then bring him on.
He seems to know.
Bring him right on.
We're not going to badger him. I need us to tap and agree that we're not going to badger him.
Well,
but we're definitely going to dig deep to find out what he thinks he know about what women want.
All right, but we're going to stop just short of badger.
We're not going to get at him, but we're going to find out. Because if he does have the secret, think about it, Felice. If he has the secret, we could sell this to every man there is and tell him, get his books, get his music, be the type of romantic, influencer.
Well, we definitely could use a heck of a lot more romantic thoughts in actions and in initiatives.
Exactly. So I just thought that this was great. So without further ado, we're going to bring him to the stage and let this show get started, because I'm excited about wanting to know, everything.
Let's see.
I just want to know, what it is, because I've lived this long and I was sure that men just don't,
Well, there you go. So
they hit and miss, but he said he's got it. So
we got it. Well, let's hear it.
Let's hear it.
All right.
I hope he brought his instruments with him.
It's a family show, Nanette.
Good afternoon, Mariel.
Hello.
Everyone, thank you for having me. I was listening to those accolades, and that's hilarious. So.
And we have to mention, ladies, that he is on the West Coast. So it is, it's a whole different environment on the West Coast. We're talking 3 different regions now, because Felice is in Dallas, so that's more centralized.
Yep.
And he's in the West Coast, and I'm over on the East Coast. But he's got something for all the, he's gonna cover all of that.
All right, love it.
Am I right, Mariel? You gonna cover all of that?
Right and left.
Okay. He said right and left. All right. Okay. So what we normally do when we bring a guest on, because we try not to put all of the things that you would describe yourself as in our introduction. So I'm just going by what I've learned in the last couple of weeks of trying to do little promos and looking into your background and all of that. I just do what I do. But I need you, since you're living it, tell us, who is Mariel?
Yes, so thank you for having me on the show, by the way. I want to first just champion. It's always good to have podcasts where we learn about, not just life, but love, relationships, and all those nuances, right? So it's funny. I was telling the ladies here, I actually, my day job is I'm in education. I've been in education 27 years. I'm at a middle school. So I'm pretty versed with students. So although 27 years, my little joke is, this is year 27, so I started as an embryo. I want to just put that.
Yeah, there you go. Because I was going to say.
But so during the day, but then at night, I do. I'm in the arts. I probably consider myself a modern Renaissance man. I do play smooth jazz and sing in church and all that stuff. But also too, I do write books. So I have a trilogy out called Everything One Wants to Hear, in the morning, all day, and all night. You all see me just 1 second. Yeah. So, nonetheless, so that's probably a snapshot of it. What preempted me to kind of write these books was the fact that, to your point, a lot of guys really don't know how to engage women. Especially in today's technology, just how to say hello. There are 10,000 ways you can say hello. And address that. So I figured how these kind of morphed or spawned. It was like, of course, sending texts out and engaging, having conversations. And a lot of people said, is this in a book? I said, no, it's not. Well, you should write a book. And I said, you know what? So probably after the 300th suggestion, I said, well, let me go and just do that, right? So now I'm being parenthetic when I say that, but at the same time, it was enough where, maybe I am onto something, and there it is. I'm probably answering a lot of questions for you, but I also know that I initially wrote these books for men, And it was just to kind of give them a different voice or lens. I mean, despite, I don't want to be insensitive to the changing times and, equality, but like I have daughters, I have sons and daughters, but I still believe in sugar and spice and everything nice. It doesn't imply that boys are snakes and snails or puppy dog tails, but what I'm saying, there has to be still I don't know. I don't want to be, I love a woman's femininity. I value the sensitive side of her, and that's just me, now, I mean, like, each his own, but I'm saying I just kind of still value that. I mean, just like I'm sure women still desire, masculine men, if you will, right? I mean, that's still I won't say it's a lost art form, but, just that's kind of the space, although it's open to all, I mean, you don't have to, I would say I'll conclude by saying this, and I'll give you guys the microphone back. It's good stuff in there, but it's both ways. When I first, my first book that came out probably 10 years ago, it was something was endorsed by a lot of churches, a lot of husband and wives, and it was designed to read to each other. So it doesn't have to be one way where the man is saying all these wonderful things. The women can conversely say, these same things in return, right? So that's a little abstract.
Okay, so in other words, I mean, just breaking it down, it seems like you've created your own pathway to a footprint where most people don't always join both. Being a poet and being a novelist as I am, I noticed that a lot of people that don't read poetry read novels. A lot of people that read novels may not read poetry, but everyone seems to read the love language.
Right.
Regardless if it's in poetry or if it's in novels, if it's in a romance book or however it is, and in music. Everybody knows the love language in music, even if there are no words.
Yeah, especially when there's no words. That's going to be one of my questions a little bit later. But why do you feel that has there been a turning away from the softer side of men communicating with women, or do you feel that you're, been gifted with a new track of speaking to women in knowing what they want to hear? How did that come about, and what's the male, I guess, maybe root how they feel or not about being softer towards women or giving them what they want to hear? Because we know this is a men's world. Even though you can't do anything without a woman, but
right. To answer your question, it's a lost art because first of all, it hasn't been taught to a lot of women's defense. They've had to wear both roles, as far as parenting, right? So they've had to be assume that role, right? Had to be the stronger, and just take on that masculine role, if you will, right? So 2 points. That's one check. So and then men haven't been taught it, right? So it's kind of like but then also too, the value. I'm gonna. I know you all said you're not gonna step on toes, but it's okay. It's a safe space. We're gonna kind of unpack a little bit. And I'm gonna tee it up by saying this: the pendulum has swung. Where now it's more. Do we really value romance? Case in point. Let me give you like a real time example for a lot of single men, social men. You probably saw a couple of years ago. It was they call the Cheesecake Factory lady, where she took offense with being taken to Cheesecake. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to go too far in that, but let me just hear him off of that. And when men approach women, they're highly successful now. So, a man may think he's doing a good thing because he wants to take you to TGI Fridays, which is a local chain. Well, she and her girls the next night are used to going to Nobu or one of the 5-star restaurants on their own dime.
Yeah.
Right. So so the question becomes, how does he navigate, in that approach? Does she value still? Is it the conversation? Is it the quality time? So now it's no longer I won't say quantitative, but it's all about qualitative, right?
Well, not only that, the thing that you brought out that stands out for me is value. The value. We no longer value the relationship. We value the aspect of what we're getting. You know what I mean? We don't put value in the words. We don't put value in the gesture. We don't put value in the companionship. We don't put value in sitting at home and watching television, you know, or not going to the movies, but just getting a movie. We no longer put the value in that, and how it has, you know, evolved. If we go back and back, well before any of us, if we go back to those days where a man had to approach not the woman wasn't included. The man approached the family.
The family.
The man had to ask the family to even consider him for a date, to consider him for marriage. The family made that decision. The woman did not make that decision. And as we come up, you know, past those days and everything else, and we come to the modern day, we now still look for that validation, or women do. I've never been that type. It didn't matter to me what someone else thought. If I felt validated, I'm good. But there are a lot of women today in everything that they do. They're looking for validation from their peers. They're looking for validation on the next level up. You know, who is it that needs to see me? God forbid if someone saw me at TGIF and I said this was my new boyfriend. They can't see me at the Cheesecake Factory. I can't take that quick selfie and put that on a podcast, or put that on TikTok, or put that on any of the social media sites and say I went on a date with this guy and this is where he took me. The same thing with appearance, the same thing with jobs. We always look for validation, except for in a relationship. We're not looking for that value anymore. Very seldom do you have a relationship where a husband or a wife wakes up in the morning and says, good morning. Or wakes up in the morning and says, hey, I love you. Or goes to bed before they go to sleep at night and says, I love you. The value is what I believe has been lost. So my question then becomes, when you say everything a woman wants to hear, we can give the romantic overtone to anything. I mean, you can say hello, sexy. You know, you can approach somebody with a sexy smile. You don't even have to speak. But in some of the wording, or in some of the poetic gestures, especially the ones that don't really read, because that's a falling art as well. How do we express the value? How do they learn that value? Because not only does the man have to know there's value in what I'm saying, the woman has to appreciate that there's value in what he's saying, regardless to like I said, how short it is. Just good morning. You look good today. Nothing special about it, but there's value. There's value in it. And I think we've lost that value. You know, never mind. That's why women are rushing to say, well, I want to marry you, so I'm gonna propose to you. We're not waiting for the value in the fact that he has chosen you. There's value in that.
Well said.
So how do they get the value out of what they want to hear if they don't even know the value?
I mean, that really is like that is the theme word probably for this conversation and beyond. Like, just is it valued? Because once you value it, then you can appreciate it. But if it doesn't, and I like you said that word, because it's not worth, it's value. And a lot of people, let me just go there too. A lot of women talk about, you know, their high value. Man, no, you want a high worth. Let's be clear. You don't want a high value. You want to. There's a huge difference. You know, you can be high worth, but not high value.
And not have high value. Because if you look at the way it was back in the day, the kings could care less about the queen. They just needed a woman to sit in that seat next to him and wear that crown. They could care less who she was. You know,
Right.
when the guys and some of the guys that, you know, go to these big galas and big events and everything, they just want a woman on their arm. There's no value in the relationship. You know, there's no difference in the relationship. So when you say everything a woman wants to hear, and especially you being a part of a community, you being a community leader, you being in youth development, and we're going to get deep into that because I think that's where it needs to start. You might have wrote that book for the adults, but I think the children need to know these are the things you need to hear. These are the things that you need to, when they approach you, it needs to be the teaching them again. Teach, like you said, it's gone. So how do we do that as a community leader? How do you instill some of those things that maybe they're not reading your book because they're not old enough to read the book, or they're not, you know, apt enough, they're not dating, they're not doing that. But as young kids, what are we still instilling in them as far as the value?
You know, in trauma informed youth development, the big concept is aside from, you know, discovering your authentic self, it's understanding the concept of team. You know, being like we all are in this journey as a team. So even as a village, we all have we all are getting there together as a team, right? And that's unisex. But then when you start delineating between genders, you know, it's okay to have those roles. Here are two posing questions that you can, not just for kids, but even adults to think, and that is this. What would you like and why would you like it?
Yeah. Wow.
Because a lot of times they can have this big what they want, but why do you feel you want so much, right? Or want so little, right? Ask really, like you said, as we're unpacking and digging in deep, yeah, those are simple questions, but they're very, very deep. A lot of people can't really answer the what for themselves. And then, but now let me really up one and watch this. It's okay to say, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
You see how it's now, because now we're getting vulnerable. That's part of I'm pulling the players back too. It's okay to say, I don't know, or I think I know. Like even Thomas Book says, everything a woman wants to hear. You know, I didn't say what a woman wants. You know, conversation, you wanted everything. How about that?
Right.
And I'm putting extra, but being serious at the same time, it's like, yeah, you need to be vulnerable and really ask yourself, what is it you do or don't want, right? And then the why.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and Nanette said something earlier that resonated with me as well. And I'm gonna try not to have this going. So I guess I want to know, you know, like the purpose behind your book, because, you know, even in the title, you know, people with a mindset that maybe will not truly connect with the book that you've written or the books, because, you know, you go, even with the title, Everything a Woman Wants to Hear, they're like, ooh, okay, so let me go get these words, and they don't have any
idea what they want to hear.
Right, or they're like, and I know I'm pretty sure I can feel that this was not your purpose of giving somebody a script to say, to go and give it to a woman, but you know, for some people, well, all people, in order to it's really to be effective, is that they have to want to, you know, value the person that they're giving these words to, even if they can't find the words. You know, there's one thing that's like, I really can't find the words to tell you, you know, express the way I feel, because everyone is not gifted with words. So kudos to you and your gift. But how do you take that to where it's not like, you know, because our society is so disconnected. There's just the internet relationships that has, once the screen is turned off, you know, there's no way to connect really, you know. So how do you then impart, hopefully more impart to the world that this really has meaning. This is not just a, oh, go say this and that'll work, or go.
Right.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So
Right.
what are your thoughts on that?
Good question. I always cue that the value piece, but like start base level, right? When I say start base level, something simple as I'm thinking about you, right? Let's take something simple there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, watch what I said earlier. I can ask you, what are you thinking about, right? But here's a bonus. Well, why are you thinking about me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that you move with intentionality,
Yeah.
right? Being to articulate with this, being able to articulate yourself, right? And and again, to your point, Felicia, and both of you ladies, a lot of us don't have that skill, may not have that skill set. And of course, I'm fortunate and blessed with that gift. But and part of this too, like it's not just a man, but it's just a thought process or an attempt to have that mindset, right?
Yeah.
Of being kind. How about just being kind?
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's something in consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And transparent. I think about some relationships I had where they got used to. Again, I had the advantage of having the charm. So when they didn't get it on Tuesday, it was a problem. Why? Because they were looking more at the consistency more so than the words, right?
Yeah.
So I'm saying, so all those little nuances right there, just those little small little, I guess, baby steps.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, I think go back to what you said earlier about the idea of team.
Right.
Team. This internet era that we're in has formed teams.
Right.
You have actual shows that are badgering relationships.
Yeah.
You have actual shows where they're badgering the men that have not made a certain level of accomplishments in a certain amount of time.
Right.
You have the shows where the women that are discontent and have moved on, or so they say, that they now are looking at, well, I do better by myself.
Right.
They're not even looking for, and I always say to them, well, then go buy your own flowers. You know what I mean? Stop trying to get the men to fall into it for you to badger them when they do, and sometimes we have to be taught how to react and they have to be taught how to approach. But we got to allow them to approach. You got to open up the door and say, okay, I'm going to let you in, but you can't have your girlfriends in the back room peeking out the door to see if he moved his left foot or his right foot. You can't have all of that. So when you say what they want to hear, I'm going to just take that little snippet. What they want to hear. What in your mind gave you the idea that, okay, this is what they want to hear? I mean, was it from the women that you've approached in your life? Was it from your mom? Was it from, your sisters maybe, or relatives? How did you determine that the words that I'm speaking, although they're mine, they may not be as poetic as Shakespeare and romance and everything else. Right. They're simple words, but this is what has come off as being okay. And this is the approach that I know. If you say these words, if you go and put that book in a bush and stand on the outside and try to speak from that book, you definitely gonna get her to open the door.
That's right. Will Smith and Will.
Yeah. You got the book in the window.
Yes. What was that movie? Yeah, where he was eating.
Right. What made you think that they were going to work?
And transparency, like a lot of of course, trial and error. Right. I'm gonna tell the truth. You like a lot of stuff. Well, that didn't work. But so you gotta in the words of Michael Jordan, I say he missed, what was it, 10,000 shots, whatever. But the point, Mike, he said he always continued to shoot the ball, right?
Right.
Try it. Eventually it's going to land. Now, I'm going to tell myself, like, Also too, I wasn't afraid to get feedback. You know, like how did this make you feel? You know what I'm saying? Like it's okay to ask questions, are very pointed questions, right? Because sometimes sometimes it may work, sometimes it doesn't work. The books in particular, they take you through a wave of emotions, meaning a lot of stuff may be corny, a lot of stuff may be fun, a lot of stuff may be romantic. You know, so it takes you through all those emotions. So a lot of it, not everything in those books hit. And certainly not everything in those books miss either, right? So you put it all in that pot because that's what humanizes it, right? Like some stuff
Understood. Yeah, because
right?
you know, some that same thing for one woman that you might say hits, but then for the next
it
one,
won't hit for the next one.
yeah,
Right.
and it gets back to those values again of
Right.
you know,
Right.
so,
Get
yeah,
back to those
it gets back to
values,
the values of,
yeah. And then also too, like because a lot of them, these are romantic devotionals, and they're basically a bunch of quips, right? But also too, like just placement, right? Sometimes just with mindset, you know, you send somebody a message at 11:56 just for lunch, or thinking about you, or send a message like just, you know, at 11:56, I know you're about to eat, but I'm thinking about you. And it's the gesture itself that you actually consider that, you are, you know what I'm saying? So it's that intent, moving with intentionality, you know, so even with the words, it's kind of like just being intentional with them, right? Just, you know, and again, not everything is, as you all just said so eloquently, not everything, it's not gonna hit for everyone, number one, but then number two, who values, you know, and also too, another big piece of love language, you know, my personal love language, ironically, is words of affirmation. You know, I know a lot of guys lead with physical touch, you know, just like a lot of women like make quality time as their, for most, I'm gonna say all, but like majority of that's their one or two, right? But mine as a male, like, you know, say nice stuff to me. You know what I mean? Like, you know, so like, so I value the words of affirmation, right? So
it's more a reflection thing,
Right.
And
you know what? It's funny that you should say that. It's funny that you should say that, because love language, my son was mentioning it to me a couple of months ago, and he said, yeah, you know, people have different love languages. And I'm saying to myself, I have never heard of anything called a love language. What the heck? No, really. I never, no. Once he broke it down and explained it.
Sure.
I knew what he was
saying.
All
the books that have been out about
it. Because now there's the therapist that uses that as a part of therapy. There's the you know, in devotionals, they use it as a part of devotionals. But when you're talking to certain people, like with me, my love language, I write. So I love writing, but that doesn't mean that the person that I don't give poems to my husband. He's not going to read a poem. That's not going to get him. You know, speaking to him does. Like you said, saying things to him does. You know, talking to him. That's his. You want to communicate with me best, you need to talk to me. We need to have open communication. We need to be able, you know, he's not romancing you with a whole lot of extra stuff. He's going to talk, and he has a tone when he wants to talk. So there's certain things that you have to get familiar with. And then you have to learn how to value the other's values.
And so and like we're all on the same frequency, which is great. And it's okay to ask, teach me how to do this, right?
Oh, wait. You know? No, I'm going to go get Felice, and I'm going to ask Felice how she's doing it so that I can come back and tell you how to do it.
Right.
But you see how, like, and I can only speak for man, right? But like, that's one of the disconnects men don't get with women, and that, we're supposed to know. Well, how about, what if I don't know? Hold me accountable for what I like. Teach me first, and then if I don't do it, then have attitude. I use a simple example, and I think it's another podcast or that very powerful. Something simple as, let's say I go on a date, meet a young lady or whatever, and she's feeling me, like I check all the boxes, all that good stuff, but we're on a date and I don't open the door for her right now. Okay. what most women do, they already texting, girl, he's off.
Yeah, right.
Whereas, watch this easy. Now, maybe she didn't even take consideration. Maybe he never learned that. Maybe he didn't have any class of chivalry. Maybe he didn't have mom or dad. He didn't have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe could it be an option to say, Marvin, I really like you, but I would like you to open the door for me. I'm just used to men opening the door for me.
Mm-hmm.
Now you give me a chance to either acquiesce, or I can say, well, hell no, you're on your own. Well, that tells you the odds are not for you.
I'm not the person for you. Right. That's exactly. But then too, you said something a little bit interesting in that. I'm used to men opening the door for me, and it needs to go deeper than that. Why do you feel the way you feel? It's not again by rote. Same thing with your words. You can go open the door because other men have done that. But again, it's that surface. For me, that's the surface.
Right, the surface.
What value do you find in men opening the door for you? Right?
Well, not only that, here's another point. I remember my son going to college, and he called up, and we made a deal with him that once a week we would pay for him to go to a restaurant. You can't do the McDonald's thing every day. You can't do, and it wasn't because we cared about his meals, because he's going to eat whatever he want to eat, go to a restaurant and order a burger.
Right.
You know what I mean? We weren't worried about that, but we wanted him to learn how to read a menu. We wanted him to learn how to look at a menu, know what to order. He's not a drinker, so we weren't worried about him ordering wine or anything like that. But once a week, don't go to your typical Friendlies or your typical restaurant. Go to a restaurant.
Right.
Yeah.
Once a week. So the meal is going to cost $30, $40. We'll give you your $30 or $40, but we want you to go to the restaurant.
Yeah.
Show us that you went to the restaurant. So he goes to the restaurant, and he calls later on that night, and he says, I got a problem. I can't do this restaurant thing. We're immediately thinking that he just doesn't want to take the time to read the menu. Some of the menus, they don't even have the price. He's trying to figure out where's the price. Some of them, they're written in different language. He's trying to figure out what is it I'm eating. We're thinking it's the reading of the menu.
Right.
He said that he had been with 3 girls, him and his boys. They went out and they took the 3 ladies, and they had a problem with the door, just like you said. Now he's opening the door.
Right.
They had a problem with walking to the outside of the curb, walking out down the street. And they had a problem with the way that they sat in the restaurant, because he wanted to sit facing the exit door.
Yeah.
So now with those 3 things, the girl got in the car that night and said to him, this was really nice, but you're a little corny, because you don't have to do all of that stuff. So he said to me, well, what do I do? I said, continue doing it. Eventually you'll meet the one that will accept that. You don't have to go back and argue with her or whatever. Continue to do it. It's your habit.
It's your habit. Well said.
But I'll come back to Marielle's point of, can you ask the question? Can you be vulnerable enough to say, look, I never did this before. I'm
right. Sure. And they're not vulnerable in that way.
Yeah. You need to find who your person is, who you align with, but still, can you be vulnerable enough to say, look, hey,
allow me to open the door. Allow me to walk to the outside of the curb. And she wasn't asking. She just told him point blank, you corny. You're just corny. And his thing was, well, what do I do about that? I'm getting called corny. And I said, no, you keep doing it, and eventually you'll run into someone that appreciates it. Because that's the way men, and like you said, they have to be taught. Which brings us to, like I said, the youth development and the empowering urban youth and everything else that you're into. Do you find yourself noticing the decline of values such as that?
So a lot of times, to your point, they don't have those values, but you kind of meet them where they are. And here's a good example that I champion, like in the trauma-informed youth development I work with. So we dealt with a lot of, of course, at-risk youth, right? But like, and borderline gangbangers, if you will, and stuff, right? And they were vandalizing walls, right? So we took them. What we did is we gave them access to different neighborhoods within the LA County that was just with 5 miles outside of their, 5-mile radius. And of course, they were, surprised, right? They never seen anything like that. And it was, more importantly, it was so close. But then, we'd have conversations when we get out in neighborhoods, we walk and talk, and we know atypical young man might be sagging, but guy has a new pair of Jordans, right? Brand new Jordans, right? So our leader, like, almost steps on the guy's shoes, and he's like, "Hey, what you doing, man?" He said, "No, he said, I got a these are $250 shoes." Like, "Oh, I know, but I'm just gonna just step on them." He's like, "Well, why in the hell would you step on my shoes, man?" He said, "Well, didn't you pay a whole lot of money for those?" He said, "Yeah, I did." Didn't you like those to be brand new? "Yeah, I do." He said, "Well, how do you think that person who owns that building feels when you vandalize what they worked so hard for?"
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And it was to see the boys' lights go off, like,
yeah.
I never thought of it. Right.
Right.
He never
Right.
thought of it.
Right. Because you don't know any.
Right. So, but then it was an aha, like, oh, I see why vandalism is a problem. Right. Because I know I went one spot, I $250 shoes. Yeah, I don't want nobody touching my shoes. These are fighting birds. Yes. So again, how do you think that business feels or that home feels when you vandalize it? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Same thing. They work hard for it. And look at how manicured these lawns are, these spaces are. You can tell you put a whole lot of money into this, and you can come over here and just, vandalize it or destroy it. How do you think that But you see how we see how we were to tap into the value.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
That's
So what's valuable to me may not be valuable, but you can see that it's the parable, right? It's like, oh, okay, now I can relate that they put their money into this lawn or to their home or whatever, the building or whatever, and you put your money into the shoes and the your how you look and how you value that is basically how others value the things that they put their money into.
Exactly.
So quick question about your youth development, and you're a teacher as well as?
So I'm a dean. I'm a dean currently. I previous I worked in trauma-informed youth development. It was organization I was championing, Brotherhood Crusade. They were founded in from Watts riots, and they've always been about community development. But in their last 10 to 15 years, they really focus on trauma-informed youth development, right? Really helping young people become their best authentic selves by discovery, but giving them access. A lot of kids in general just don't have their. I've been in education. Kids are universally percentages are smart. Like, it's just the access. Our students are Black, and they just don't have the access, right? And not only do they not have access, they don't know how to tap into the access.
Yeah.
But once you show them the access and then how to tap into it, right? The world it becomes a lot easier.
Wide open. Right.
Right. But a lot of it is by way of being vulnerable, because it's funny we're talking about relationships, but like a lot of people don't want to admit, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah. We live in a bravado world. World where everything is presented as a success, or there's no struggle behind it, nor is there any work behind anything. So we're like afraid to say,
I tried this.
Well, or even trying this. Like, there should be no trying. There should just be doing, and the results are, it's this magic thing. That's all we see. All of our youth are bombarded with this magic thing. Oh, I got it going on. I got this. Because, in the advent of the YouTubes and all the social medias or whatever, what you see is someone quote unquote making it, but we know that it's smoke and mirrors in a facade 90% of the time, right? 90% of the time, you know, they're flashing with their Jordans or whatever, and you know, there's no story behind it, behind getting those Jordans, right? You know, yes, probably their parents paid for them, you know, but they're flexing like, you know, this is mine and I'm entitled to it, and you know, all I got to do is ask for it. So that gives that impression to the other youth in the community. Oh, all you got to do is ask for it, you know, and it's yours.
Well, not only that, the other thing that I know with youth development and he hit a button. Don't know what button he hit, but just to carry on while he's resetting his camera. With youth development and empowering urban youth and trying to get the urban youth together in what they need and everything else, and trying to develop youth, I just want to commend you, because that is one of the most difficult things to do in a community, because you're not, especially so you're dealing with the school rules and regulations and their hurdles that they want you to jump over. You're dealing with the community schools and regulations, that the hurdles they want you to jump over. Then you're dealing with the parents and the hurdles, things that they want you to jump over. And then here you have this kid who you see on a daily basis, and his actions are not seen by any of those entities.
Right.
They don't see what you see, be it talent, be it, you know, struggle, be it confusion, be it peer pressure, be it, you know, I just don't know where to fit in, be it I've got other issues. You see it all as the educator, as the, you know, being right there in the hub of where they are. And you don't see one kid, you see a whole environment of them. So to be able to empower them, and I didn't realize this until I got a little older. You know, we don't realize stuff when we're young. You know,
What?
you know, as my grandmother said, keep on living. You know, you don't understand it when you're younger, but when you get older and you reflect back, and I'm quite sure in your years of tenure, you can look back over the years and think about that one kid that gave you a struggle in your very first or second year, and how he or she evolved and became of their own. Not saying that they might have made top anything, but they evolve, they grow, you know, and that stands for something. So I want to commend you, because I know from my background, I know that's a difficult task, and it's rewarding. The kids that I coached for 20 some odd years, it's our next year will be our 50th reunion of that team.
Wow.
And they're contacting me saying, "You coming to this? You come?" No, I ain't coming. But they're all adults now. But I'm grateful for it. But when we say youth development and empowering urban youth, your struggle has to be 10 times more difficult than mine was. Because they weren't open to the internet then. They didn't have eyes on the instantaneous stuff. They knew they had to work. Now you got this instantaneous stuff. How do you combat that in this environment with you know, trying to get them to see things? Like you said, the kid with the sneakers. I didn't have kids that could wear $200 sneakers. They were being told, you're gonna put these sneakers on that's costing $10 and that's it. You know, nobody was buying, nobody even bent over to buy 10, you know, top brand anything. Most of the kids all had the same thing. So how do you deal with that? The peer pressure.
The Comic Relief is you know, it's on having hair. I pulled it all out. That's fun. But no, on the serious side, of course, it is a calling. But then too, just give them alternatives, and like you said, finding ways to help them value things. Something very. I'm gonna localize it in real time. You notice I do have an ascot on, so I wear it about 2 to 3 times a week, and I don't wear it just because of high fashion. That's not what I wear it. I wear it for the very reason you said. They look like, sir, what is that? What's that man scarf you got on? Like it prompts because they've seen it around. It prompts curiosity, and I start asking questions about it. You know, because they like how. Then they want to. Well, can you show me how to tie one? I sure can. And then the next thing, every once the biggest highlight I do it when I solicit, but like once a year there's a kid who will come to school with an ascot. Like just out, and it's like, man, it shows the impact.
Yeah.
Right.
For the attempts. Remember I did have hair. There was some probably the biggest compliment, and this is funny you mentioned like the first couple of years of teaching. It was probably like in April, and I came to school and about 4 or 5 guys. I used to wear a part in my hair. I used to have like a little part, like down the center, I think you will. And it's like 4 boys had like cut parts in their head. And just unsolicited.
Yeah,
right.
Because it shows they're watching.
Right. Exactly.
Exactly.
They all have they have those exploratory minds where they want to see change. They just know how to get access to it. But like you said, you give them access, give them something, an alternative to look at, and let them do their own kind of I'm gonna say Montessori approach, but you kind of let their own discovery. Right.
And you gotta nowadays they want that instant pat on the back. They want that instant recognition. They want that instant that you paid attention. They are attention getters. And I think that society failed, and I say it all the time, we failed them. We really did when we said that everybody gets rewarded. We said everybody gets the idea that they get a trophy or they get the no, everybody gets participation.
Right. But that's
when you work a little harder, you get what the next level is.
Right.
But everybody gets the participation. Every one of you has participated, and we think you should be rewarded for your participation. But everybody is not going to get that trophy. Everybody's not going to get that outstanding award. Everybody's not going to get that. But when you're talking to the children, they get it.
Right. But with that participation thing, it comes from our society in a way over celebrating the achievements. And I just in a way to not to take away from anyone that achieves, and they should be celebrated, but to the exclusion of anyone that has made efforts to do something, right? What do they say? Second is the first last or something. I don't know. But and so it has fostered this deal of, let me figure out something that you will pay attention to me for, right? Because again, you tout the winner, and not knocking winners, love them, celebrate them. I'm a celebrator of all things. But in that, so now that there's this environment of being fostered, especially, it was the precursor to the internet. And so now when you see the internet, it's like anybody can be, you can
be whatever.
Right. They call it whatever. They're taking it to the extreme. Can do it, right. And so now they're like, well, I don't know what to do, so let me do something crazy. And then that gets
that's what's on the internet. Exactly.
That gets attention. It doesn't really get celebrated in the way that really that they're crying out for. It really is that attention, that connection, that look at me, validate me as somehow, some way, call my name or whatever.
Show me it's me. But Mark, how do you deal with you said you were dealing with middle schoolers. Okay. Middle schoolers fall in love too.
Do they, Lynette?
They think they do. They think they do. They have these little, little things going on, and you being an educator and you being able to visualize these things. Do you think that and we said it earlier, that the men are not taught early enough, that the females do duplicate what their girlfriends are doing, and sometimes group, have a group hissy fit. That's what I call it, a group hissy fit. Let's just call each other up and badger the men, that type thing. Do you think that in the middle school level, that the social environment needs to have this type of inspirational and inspiring and devotional type thing for them as well?
Unequivocally, yes. Because, like you said, at this level, it's probably to reinstate chivalry, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, everything has to be taught, and the biggest impression, obviously, is going to be the younger people. Where you talk about value, they're still in a teachable and moldable. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, more. This is like prime time to do that. Now, of course, you do have a lot of boundaries. You know what I mean? Like you said,
Exactly.
and like, although we are parents 6 hours a day, we still have a lot of stipulations and rules and policies that we are confined to, right? That and a lot of people are afraid to because it's litigious. They want to lose their job.
Yeah, you don't want to lose your job, right?
Appropriate, or but part of technology, we help them understand that what with cyber world, you put it out there in 2 seconds, it's there for life.
Yeah.
Right.
We teach kids now, like our conversation, we teach them that you want to go to Stanford or Harvard or any of these big time schools.
Got to be careful what you're putting out there now.
Yeah.
That's right.
Putting out there right now because that's for life. When they profile, when they Google you, when they do those searches, all that information comes up. So you help them understand that this is with you for life. You mean to tell me I said F you to a teacher and posted it?
Right. Or was in one of those video fights. Yeah, was in one of those video fights on the video, thought the video was cool.
Right. It's like, that's with you. You cannot get that back. So, think that through. Don't be impulsive, right? And they all are.
Well, even if we don't go into the total, love language and inspiration that you give in your books, do you think that it would be something that would be comprehensive to just show them the values? Just the value level of it. It doesn't have to be the words that the boy says to the girl or how the girl responds or anything. I mean, because look at it this way, and because you're right there in the school, they got the proms going on, and the girls don't know how to dress for the prom. In the schools, like some of those things that they were wearing, I was like, well, okay, they get to the school administration won't let them put that on, but they letting them in with those clothes on. And then they had the middle school wasn't too bad, but then I saw the little babies in the why are we having a kindergarten prom? Why are we doing that? So if we're not going to prepare them on one side to understand the values, we're showing them off on another side that they don't completely understand.
No,
they have no idea. So what do we do about that, Mar?
You kind of first teach boundaries, right? And understand, like, personal space. Right. When we like in the classroom, we do something called Capture Kids Heart, which is based like a social emotional learning component in classrooms. But they develop a social contract where, going back to that team concept, where they come up with their rules for the classroom, right? And everybody has an input, and everybody signs it and holds themselves accountable. And then the teacher uses it as an advantage, because when the class is getting out of that social contract, they can refer back to this contract that you all have signed. And early on, the value of a man or woman is only good their word, only good at value. They're only as good as your signature.
Right.
Or this is, and we hold them accountable. That team concept. So I would say, just really, the initial place is starting off with helping them, teaching them boundaries, but first understanding why boundaries are important. And that's many ways that you could just use simple examples of, like, when mom and dad's cooking. The pan is hot, right?
Right,
You touch,
right.
so if the pan is hot. If the pan is hot when you touch it, then you have to understand these are boundaries here you set up. Respect that fire. If you set that fire,
Yeah.
respect.
Mhm,
I'm gonna give you an
mhm.
example of just like helping them see where here's why the boundary is in place.
Mm-hmm.
Right, right.
Here's why we turn to say, remember the commercial, keep those pot handles turned in. Well, here's the why, because
Mhm.
someone can get burned to death, skull. You get third, fourth degree burns, right? If you
Right,
Yeah.
like
right.
fire, right? So
Yeah.
the initial step really is just teaching them boundaries. First off,
Mhm.
understanding what they are, right? A lot of it too is just, and in the words of Malcolm X, don't assume anything, brother. Like don't assume
Yeah.
people. Oh, going back to what I said earlier about the whole dating example. Like it's assumed he should open the door. Okay, he's 15, still doesn't know how. I mean, I get it, but
Mhm.
let's hold him accountable for now that you've educated him on what you like or you think you need for him to be successful in a relationship. You can hold him
Yeah.
accountable for that, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't
Mhm.
know if I explicitly answered your question, but yeah, like I said, that's a
Yeah,
starting point.
yeah.
Really
Yeah,
understanding,
Well,
because
understanding what.
yeah, because the thing about it is, if the education in the schooling doesn't become the
Mhm,
stepping stone.
Mhm.
It used to
mhm,
be, okay, my mom and dad only had a third grade education or a fourth grade education, but I went to school,
Mhm.
and
mhm.
school gave me what they didn't give them. You
Mhm.
know what I
Right,
mean? School
right.
provided for me the
Mhm,
education maybe that I didn't get at home. You
right.
know,
Mhm.
dad worked hard, mom had to stay home and take care of the kids. Well,
Mhm,
school taught me to get my education so that dad wouldn't have to work as hard, or if it was a male, he what he had to do. So
Mhm.
school gave some of the things that was lacking as far as an education
Mhm.
at home. Well, a part of the education is learning your
right.
manners.
Yeah.
You might know a little bit of your manners at home. Thank you, please,
Mhm.
bless you, and cover your mouth when you sneeze or
Mhm.
cough. You learn the little things at home, but now at school, you know not to push and shove.
Right.
You
It's
know
the
more.
opposite.
You know more about the sharing.
Right.
So the school is a learning extension,
Mhm.
Mhm,
and sometimes a replacement for
Mhm.
what's missing.
Yeah. Mhm.
So if we're talking about as we get older, what the expectations are in a relationship
mhm,
between a man and a woman, well, you got to know those values first. You got
Mhm.
to know, it's got to start somewhere. And
Mhm.
you being involved in youth development and urban, empowering, how great is that? You know, Felice always says God is always in it somewhere,
right.
so how great
I
is
do.
that you're in that place where you can
Mhm,
implement some of those things so that the next woman that
Mhm.
goes to uh the restaurant doesn't say, I don't want to go to this restaurant,
mhm,
because she doesn't realize that a bill at that restaurant could
Mhm.
cost just
Yeah.
as much as going to an Italian restaurant, because they give you a lot of food. The food is good, and it
Mhm.
costs a little bit more than
mhm.
McDonald's if you
Come
Mhm.
if,
on.
if you go in there.
Right,
That ain't a
right,
cheap restaurant.
right.
Mhm.
She didn't
You know,
understand the mission.
Mhm.
She didn't
I'm a,
understand it.
I'm gonna insert though, like just and ladies, the thing, overarching thing is again just having value. I'm sure
Yeah.
it's a true story. I think one of the most romantic uh, dates I ever went on was I took a young lady to McDonald's. And I watched it, and I was like probably like, how was I? I was close to 40. But let me make the point. The reason why it's such a great date is because we had I I I focused on the novelty. Do you remember when we had the fried apple pies? The
Yes.
Happy Meals. We sat down and it was a conversation, and we were talking about. I was like, well, "How do you eat your fries?" She said, "I like eating with sweet and sour sauce." I was like, "Well, I eat mine with barbecue sauce. Let me taste yours." Do you like your fries?
Mhm.
I showed her a trick at McDonald's. I said, you want to get the best fries, get them with no salt because it forces you to
Right. Gotta make
um,
them hot.
make them fresh.
Yeah,
She
fresh.
never she never knew that. It was like, oh my god, like so we it was a novel time. We sat in the booth, right next to Mount McDonald. It was more just we were just recalling our novel experiences we had at McDonald's.
Mhm.
Then we went to a museum that was next door, but it was like such a great time
Yeah.
because it wasn't about the food. It was
Yeah.
about the time,
Yeah,
our
That's right.
experiences.
Right.
the
You know,
conversation
it
and
was
the
the
time
conversation
spent.
Yeah.
Right. Because
and
when
our
you go in with
experiences.
the money in mind,
Mhm.
when you go
Right.
in with the how much is being
Mhm.
spent, you
Mhm.
miss the
Yeah.
value of the relationship, the
That's right.
value of the date. The
That's right.
date is
Right.
not for
Yeah.
I mean, I've dealt with just going somewhere and saying, I really, really, really just want to go somewhere and be at peace and have a conversation.
Sure.
Mhm.
You
Well,
know,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah.
that type thing, the picnic.
Mhm.
Right.
Take
Yeah.
the picnic basket and go and sit on somebody else's grass.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
you go into the park and you're sitting on the grass. It may not
Right.
be the ideal thing, but when you go to a beach, what are you doing? When you go to, when you go to these different places, what conversation?
Mhm.
Like you said,
Right.
everything a woman wants to hear. What
Mhm.
you want to hear is a good conversation.
Yeah.
Something
Hey,
that's going to spark your attention, make you turn your head 2 or 3. He said,
Mhm.
what? What did he say? You
Mhm.
know, you
Yeah.
you really want to know, did he say that? What did he say?
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know,
right.
Yeah. No,
you
and
want
and
that.
again, I feel that it is about the experience, and not just of the restaurant, but of the person, right? So
Right.
and just one of the things that you were talking about a little bit earlier about giving, um, educating our youth, right? But what's missing, and we've talked about this a couple of times, especially in our internet world, is that they have knowledge, they get knowledge, but they don't have wisdom, right? So
Mhm.
they get exposed to these things, but they don't have the wisdom to apply
Mm-mm,
them, or
mm-mm.
or the experiences. We've had this conversation about, um, there's a wives tale or little short story about, a woman, when back in, like, I don't know, 20s, 40s, 50s, something like that. The mother would be cook a pot roast, and she would cut it
Mhm.
off on each end and put it in the pot, right? And
Right.
then as she taught her daughter the same thing, and then it's like the granddaughter or great granddaughter is like finally says, "Why did we cut each end off?" Because at that time it's a waste, right? Because and the reason why she did it was the pot was not big enough to hold the roast, right, or whatever it was. But as it evolved, the world had evolved, so they made bigger pots and all this other stuff. But they kept cutting off each end of it and like tossing it, really. And
And not
so,
asking questions. And not
right,
asking questions.
well, so but to get into that,
Mm-hmm.
because even, it's what we do, and we're immersed in whatever we do. Like you said, Nanette, without the question, but there was never really an explanation, even, going in, just,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, and because it never, just in that example, there was never, it's like the mothers taught them how to cook, taught her daughters how to cook, but didn't give her the, oh, we maybe we need the dough this way because of that. It'll rise better, or we'll do that. It's just given those set of instructions, and then you just
Mhm.
go ahead and follow the instructions without ever connecting to, what happened to where we do it this way. It was just like, oh, that's just the way we do it, that kind of thing. So when you give knowledge, there needs to be a connection to it, of why we do it this way, anymore, when calculators came out, right? You had to, do your math problems and show your work, right? And then so calculators came in, and now you don't really connect to how did you get to this answer? And the calculator just told me, because you don't sit and do the work. Math is more optional nowadays, right?
And relationships are
Mhm.
work.
Mhm.
Relationships
Yeah,
definitely take work.
yeah, and there's
So
Mhm.
I
context.
know you said that women read your books, and I
Mhm.
know you said that you have a women populace that reads the
Mhm.
books. Have you
Mhm.
found any men that thought, "Hey, I need a pickup line,"
So,
"Hey, I need to know how to approach or what to say." Have you found any men that have commented on your book?
so of course, most men say they're too cool for school. Like I remember when I first, like, came out with the first book, they read through it, was like, oh, I could have helped you write this, and I respect say, I understand, but in my mind, like, well, you didn't, but
Right.
that's neither here nor there.
Right.
But
That
I
part.
want to bust a bubble, but of course, a lot of outside of our African American community, a lot of the non, African Americans kind of like tap into it. But I did have a guy who said, he was a barbershop, because I used to pitch use a lot of barbershop and stuff, and of course they would laugh. But like one barber said, he said, um, if I was if I was really a wordsmith, I would actually read these books to my wife, because this is good stuff if I was into it, right?
Mhm.
And so a lot of times they just guys assume they have it. The younger guys kind of look at. Now I will say that it's funny. I was at a high school, and a bunch of guys found out, because I keep the two separate. I don't my night life is totally separate. Just but anyway, of course, some kids Googled me and they found out, and they were like, "Man, I got your book," and I used like, "Man, this is some great stuff." But it was kind of like, but I couldn't tell them that. So I couldn't tell them, what we do.
Right.
So, but again, I think more like, so thank you for this show. Like, people get more access. I haven't from here and this entire summer, I'm doing hard push, just really get it back out there, because
You get it back out there.
Yeah.
So now,
But,
what is your music like?
Yeah, I'm dying to jump into that, right?
Yeah, we're running a little over, but just before we close, give us an idea of what type of jazz. Are you doing contemporary jazz, or what type of jazz are you doing?
Yeah, so it's smooth jazz album.
Smooth
look
jazz.
forward.
Okay.
Look forward in the summer. I'm a freelance musician. I do a lot of playing, like locally and things like that, and like for B-list.
Now, do you write your
B-list
music?
artists. I do it right as well.
Okay.
Like smooth jazz, more instrumental. Like, I'm a keyboard player, right? I do sing,
right.
That album, most of it would be. May have a couple of songs sing, but most of it would be, keyboard work, if you will, right? So
okay. And what's the name of your album?
It's gonna be called Arts. So we call it Arts and Crafts of Mariel. It's not out yet, but it'll be out hopefully by summer. Arts and Crafts. The Arts and Crafts of Mariel. And it's funny. It's not going to be. So it's funny, in today's technology, I'm still going to get an actual CD. I know that no one buys CDs. It's cool, but it's not that. Even that this product is about me. It's not. I'm not trying to really make money off of it. It's more just completion, if you will, right? It'll manifest itself, but the CD is going to have this baby picture I had, mom took, that is like such a great baby picture. So it's a little boy with an afro, like I was about 2 years old. So it's Arts and Crafts, but then now it'll have me on the backside of the cover. Of course, our social media, they'll see me and have access, but like the cover layout is going to be me as a 2-year-old, and it'll say the Arts and Crafts of Mariel. But in the back, of course, it'll have me as an adult. But so it's a smooth jazz album. So I'm not straight ahead jazz by no means. We're more of a smooth jazz, or call it is instrumental R&B music, because that stuff on the wave and all those, that ain't jazz. It ain't jazz.
Right.
Well,
R&B. It's okay though. It's okay. But so
Well, I truly admire this because again, because we all have the ability to speak. Words are great, and as you have written this book, you've given words, but to invoke a language through music, to me, is just phenomenal. So, and I can't imagine you playing in not being able to write music, and it truly helps. And for me, more to anyone that hears your music can apply, their I don't know what to say, but you could use your words and then that's a copy of your words. But to embrace what your music is and then to incorporate it into their self-expression, I think becomes a little bit better or easier to do, because then it's more authentic, because words can, get in the way sometimes. So I feel you on that, and I want a copy.
So we know that your album is coming out soon, and we know that you have your books on www.everything-a-woman-wants-to-hear.com. We have those connects for you and everything else, and we want to know what's new and upcoming, and we want to let people know, as of this date, Mariel has signed on to be on our in our magazine,
Yay.
So he is being featured in the magazine. So all his information will be in the upcoming July issue. He will be in our magazine. I thank you for that. Being a part of our, us continually trying to spread the word for upcoming artists and new artists and old artists and those that know what to do and everything else. It's a part of our community. So I want to thank you for that. But I know that Felice has a last question to throw at you.
I do. So yeah, as I've listened to you, I kept giving the image of the Superman cape.
That is it.
Well, there you go. Because as you said, daytime you have one. You're the Clark Kent during the day, and then Superman at night.
That's exactly what it is. Yes, I'm saying the
See,
devil. Yes, that's exactly
I picked
what it
up on
is.
that. Okay, so in everything that you do, what do you do, especially Superman? How do you fill your cup? What do you do to fill your cup? Because you're being Clark Kent and helping the children and developing them, and then at night you are, have the other persona. But what do you do to take care of you as you're taking care of everyone else?
Yeah, I haven't updated my Instagram, but my Instagram is at Mar-El Author. But like in a little caption, little 2-line bio, whatever it talks about. One of the things I say, and because this is my honest answer, I love naps. So I still probably get 7 hours of sleep a day. Like meaning like, so I spread it out. There's some nights where I may sleep for 4 hours, and then I'll take a 2.5 hour nap. Right.
Sure.
So rest, I've learned that my pastor told me this once. He said the body has a natural desire to heal itself. Yeah. And not discounting all the organic this and all the holistic this and all those things, but the body has a desire to always be made whole. That's why again, the best medicine is rest, because your body, there's some things your body doesn't know what it needs, but for the most part your body knows how to fix itself, but you have to give it the time and the space for it to fix itself. So I mean, like, do I do fun activities and all that? Yes, it's cool, but really I do value rest. And now that I'm older, I even kind of got it succinct where I go through I'm not religious about it, but I try to be intentional about even rest where the body has optimum rest where it's at a certain temperature, but then you turn it off. A lot of people think you're supposed to keep that uniform temperature all the way to 9. No, it's total opposite. That's why notice those although I'm from California, right, in sunny California, I know like in the East Coast and Midwest where there's hard winters, those people still have great rest because it gets up high, but then your body forced to those 10-degree nights. You know what I'm saying? You basically go into a coma, for that's work, just for repair, right? So I'm just using that little formula to say that I do value rest. That's my thing to fill my cup. I mean, like there's other things I do on the side, but I would say that I champion, really value making time for that so the body can repair itself.
Awesome.
That's great.
Very good.
Well, we want to thank you. We want to thank our audience for the evening. We want to thank everyone for tuning in. You can see the replay on YouTube, or you can go to my website, www.NannetteMBuchanan.com. And like I said, subscribe to the July issue, because Mar-El and his story will be a part of that issue. And our other guests that have been on the show are also in the issue, but the July issue is coming up. So we want to thank you, Mar-El, for being a part of that and being a part of our show. Thank you so much for being a great guest. We appreciate you. And good night, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you as well.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Everyone. Yes.